here today with Stevie Kim, the managing director of Vinitaly, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with her, but I'm going to ask her to give us a brief introduction.
So my name is Stevie Kim. I'm officially the managing director of Vinitaly International. I oversee various products. So we promote Vinitaly mostly abroad, whether it's in Hong Kong, Russia, America, everywhere basically in the world. And for the flagship edition in Verona, which is going to happen actually now, soon in April. But we oversee also Vinitaly International Academy, an educational platform dedicated to, of course, Italian wine education. We certify Italian wine ambassadors. We do an annual sort of a wine experience, but Italian version as an opening event for Vinitaly with Wine Spectator, where they select the top Italian wine producer, about 100, this year 130. And we do a walk-around tasting. We oversee also Wine Business Forum, which maybe perhaps your audience could be interested. It's called Wine to Wine, and it's a 2-day parallel consecutive workshops, about 70 workshops and about 100 speakers from all over the world. 2,000 attendees. So it's kind of a big wine business event that happens in November. And we also do a wine competition, which will start in 1st of April. So many things. And then in addition, like right now, I'm in the podcast booth because I founded a wine podcast in 2017, and which we are extremely happy about because we went from like 23,000 listens to 1 million last year, and we're growing by the day. So, and we do books, we do videos, we have a video channel now. So many things.
Excellent. That is amazing, actually. Thank you. So we want to hear, in your opinion, what are the most urgent challenges of the industry to be resolved?
Well, I mean, that's such a tough question just because you can ask that at any period. And it is always about, of course, the political factors, the economic factors, environmental factors, the production factors, and perhaps the most importantly, of course, human resources, right? So, I mean, I don't think we have time to address all of those, but right now, certainly the political aspect is very unstable. And that has a trickle effect on the wine industry in general, because that also will directly impact the supply chain and the logistics, as well as the cost for production and packaging and everything else, and resources as well. So. Of course, the big elephant is always the climate change and how is it impacting the wine industry. That's a huge discussion, which I'm not an expert, but there are plenty of literature out there, and that affects what happens both in the vineyard, so viticulture, but also the winemaking.
Absolutely. So since we're on the subject of sustainability, I was wondering, how do you think the industry is adapting to this new reality, and what do you think? Do you have any ideas for what would be the best way to foster positive impact business?
I think one mistake that we often make, and myself included, mea culpa, is that when we talk about sustainability, we think it's just environmental. We think about climate change, we think about, the soil structure or water, but it's not just, I think it's very important when we talk about sustainability, we need to talk about also the economic sustainability. People forget that because in the end, you produce wine, but you have to make a living. Otherwise, it's completely unsustainable. And that's, I think, something that we forget to address at times because we are all so romantic. I think people in the wine industry, we're all romantic. That is that romantic side of me. It's so romantic to have a glass of wine and, have very intellectual discussions. But often, right now, because of COVID, I mean, let's not forget, this is a completely, even before the war that's going on right now, even if the pandemic has completely changed the rules of engagement for sustainable wine industry. And I'm talking about, of course, if you take even just the human resources, even the vineyard people, like for the harvest, we used to have people coming from all over the world. I'm talking about Italy, but that hasn't always been very feasible because of the COVID restrictions, the travel restrictions and whatnot. And that created, of course, huge challenges for the winemakers, especially the smaller ones. And then right now, currently, because of COVID, because of the war, now the supply chain is completely messed up. Right now, even the cartons, the paper costs, and the glasses. So like it is creating an enormous economical problem where it isn't sustainable to own a winery nor produce wine anymore. So I think those are the issues that I think, yes, the environmental, everyone talks about the climate change, right? And its effect on viticulture, vineyard management. But we have to also think about, in the end, the economic sustainability.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. I think I agree with you, actually. Even when you said climate change, I thought you were going to talk about social sustainability. But it's also part of that, because the winemakers and the workers are part of that, and part of that economic sustainability you're talking about. So thank you for that. My last question would be, what are Vinitaly's challenges after 2020, 2021, and the current COVID situation?
I was in Paris for another exhibition recently, Vinexpo. I was so happy that they did a great job. Of course, it's completely different now because of travel restrictions, right? There were no Asians or very few Americans, etc. But I think the challenges are that not to be afraid, number one. It was just wonderful to see that you can actually do wine tasting. To be quite honest, I've never, I run an agency, a media agency, so I never closed up my office. We always ran full service office, and we did all of our events, much more a digital or hybrid format. But now the challenges are that we still have to overcome that fear of getting exposed, because COVID, I think we were at a really good place like a month ago, and now, as now there's another variant, and extremely contagious. I have an office of 40 people. No one got affected by COVID because we have a very large space here with the social distancing. And in just past 2 weeks, I have 3 people out because they have COVID. So we cannot let our guards down. We still have to practice social distancing, but we have to be smart about it. So I think, yes, and also I think the challenges are in general that, listen, it's never going to go back to 2019. We have to, even for the producers, right? I used to log in 300,000 miles per year just traveling. I was airborne most of that. That is completely unsustainable, right? So I think now we have to think about even the the producers used to always do the winemakers dinner or go to the retailer shop and with their agents. That is not sustainable anymore, right? So I think we all have to come up with different business solutions. I think you had kind of the right mind, the virtual wine fair, but you have to understand not what you think that the producers need. You have to start from what the producers need, what they're asking you to do. So we have to be much more clever and much more, I would say, empathetic as to put yourself in the producer's shoes and think about how we can really add value and help them to face this new way of doing businesses, especially digitally, much more inclination for that. But we have to create actual tools that they can utilize so that they can integrate into their business model.
Thank you so much, Kim, for your time. It was great to hear all of your answers to these questions, because I believe you have a very broad vision of what's going on, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.